Bruchim Habayim, welcome everybody. Welcome to Get Into the Zone for Purim. I'm speaking first. I don't normally because there's a snowstorm and I got to get out of here before I get trapped. Friends, we are in a very special month. The month, of course, is, I'll try that again. The month is Adar. Adar. Adar is the last Jewish month. We sing on Friday night in Lachadodi, Sof Maaseh, B'machshvat Chila. The end of all action is the beginning of all thought, which is a fancy way of saying you begin with the end in mind. Everything follows the last part of a process. Everything goes after the last moment, because that's your goal line. That's the strip the marathon run is going through, and they break through that strip at the end. Not that I've ever done it, but my wife has. And they are in tremendous joy, just finishing another year. If that's the only simcha we have in our lives, dayenu. This is where we've got to. And there's gratitude for that. There's a lot of akarat hatov we should have that we're able, because everybody here, I'm sure, knows people who did not make it to the end of the year. I know I do. And therefore, just having reached the end itself is tremendous simcha and joy. But it goes much, much deeper than that. Adar, just the name itself. By the way, you should know that the names of the months first appear in Megillat Esther. Before that, we refer to the months by numbers, because that's how the Torah refers to them. So this first month, which is Nisan, because that's the month we left Mitzrayim, is Chodesh Rishon, Iyar, Sheni, and onwards. It's only once we are in Galut that we start taking the names that are attached, and that's why in Megillat Esther, you'll see it gives the number of the month, and then it gives the name of the month as well. So Adar is the 12th month, and we'll see the 13th as well, potentially. And it's also the name as well. Now, the word Adar was not chosen, the names of the months were not chosen by coincidence. There's a depth to them as well. What is Adar? Well, it's made up of two parts, Aleph and Dar. What's Aleph? One is Hashem. Dar is to live, to reside. So we know just by look at the name the Chazal used to name the months, because they chose names strategically. And I'm going to assume they chose names that reflected Galut. We know that Adar is the month that God resides in. He's waiting there at the finish line for us. After we've gone through all the challenges and tribulations that come with the year, Hashem is there like a family member at the end of the marathon to wrap us up in that warm blanket after 12 months and to say, you've come home. You've reached the end. But Adar has another unique quality. As well as being the month that God resides in, it's the only month that is potentially two. What we call in Hebrew, Shana Mu'uberet, a pregnant month. You have a year that's pregnant. How can the year be pregnant? It's because it's got two Adars. That's to do with the fact that we need Nisan to fall in the spring season. And since there's an 11-day discrepancy between the solar and lunar calendar, we keep having to push Nisan forward. The month before Nisan, the first month, is Adar. And so, every few years or so, an extra Adar is thrown into the mix, thereby pushing Nisan forward so it doesn't travel backwards through the year by 11 days each year, but remains in the spring season. If it's got 2 months, that means that Adar is the only holiday that has 60 days in it. The only month that has 60 days in it. 60 days. Now that should awaken a part of your brain. Part of your cerebellum should wake up. Because that means every day within Adar is one of 60. Have you heard that fraction before? 1 in 60? You should have. It comes up a lot in Jewish life. We know, for example, that honey is the 60th of the man. We know that dreams are a 60th of nevuah prophecy. We know that sleep is a 60th of death. As my wife says to me every morning, she tries to wake me up. She's like, you're more than a 60th dead right now. Could you please get up and go to Minyan? We know that fire is a 60th of Gehenna. We know that Shabbat is a 60th of Olam Haba. But there's another 60th. And that is, let's say you're cooking a food and something non-kosher falls inside your kosher food. We have a concept which most of you have heard of called Batel B'Shishim, nullified 1 in 60. And by the way, if something does fall in and you're able to remove it, or even if you're not able to remove it, it becomes eliminated. It's batel. It's as though it's not there. And you must eat that food. You're making a cholent and a little bit of pig falls in somehow. I don't want to ask questions. I'm not judging. But it happens by accident. Not on purpose, by the way. You can't do it on purpose. But if it falls in by accident and you're able to fish that piece out, you have to eat that food. If it's 60 parts kosher to 1 part non-kosher. Batal b'shishim. The rabbis tell us something profound. They say that every negative aspect that falls in this month can be nullified. There is no bad. This month or these months, if it's a year of Shana Mu'beret, which isn't this year, but Adar has the power to nullify. And that's why it's Aleph Dar. God lives in this month. Sof Maaseh. God is waiting for us right now to carry us into the great month of Nisan. You know, the last 7 days of this month were chosen by Moshe Rabbeinu to build the Mishkan in preparation for the first of Nisan, which is a very, very special day in the Jewish calendar for 10 very good reasons, but that is not for now. So you wonder why Haman, out of all the months, because Haman, Achashverosh, and Vashti and others too, they knew the power of months. They knew the power of mazalot. They knew that we had this ability to tap into certain energies of the month and win them. And we know that Haman rolled dice to figure out which month he was going to try to kill the Jewish people. And he started Nisan, and then Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, and he went through and eventually got to Adar, which, by the way, he chose Nisan to be the time to decide, but Adar was chosen, and he chose Adar to wipe us out. Hello? Didn't he watch any of our classes online? Didn't he realize that Adar is a good month? Why did he choose Adar? Because he came to the conclusion that this is a month that the greatest prophet that ever lived died, Moshe Rabbeinu, on the 7th day of Adar. So he realized and said, it must be the mazal of Adar. Maybe it's mavatel, it's nullified. Maybe the first half of the month is bad. The second half is good, which, by the way, there is such a concept. Certain months are actually split like Av. Half is bad, half is good. We have Tisha B'Av, but then we have Tu B'Av. So we have this division of months as well. Certain months go to the bad, some go to the good, and some are split right down the middle between Yaakov and Esav. We do see this concept. So why was Haman mistaken? The mistake he made was that Moshe Rabbeinu also died on this day as well. But he also lived on this day. He was born on the 7th of Adar. So he was half right, but he was half wrong. Because Adar is also a time of tremendous celebration and rescue and salvation. Because he may have died on it, but he was born as well. And by the way, when a person is born, your Hebrew birthday has tremendous significance and relevance. You should know that. I mean, on a basic level, that's the day God decided you should be born. Think about that. 1 minute you weren't there, and you thought you've always been around. You haven't. And the next minute, boop, you turn up. That date was chosen for a very specific reason. That is worth, and people do celebrate their birthdays. I know people poo-poo it. Yeah, birthday. Paro's birthday is mentioned in the Torah. Therefore, the bad things, they're not bad things. They're a time for revaluation. They're a time for potential teshuvah and success. And they should be used accordingly. And that's the mistake that Haman made. Where do we see this in the mazalot? Well, the word mazal, we translate as luck. We mentioned before, that's not a good translation. It's from the Lashon nizul. Things flow a certain way. And that's a perfect word for Adar, because the image that we are presented to represent the mazal, the month or months of Adar, are fish, dagim. We are right now in fish month, the dag. And by the way, does anyone know the image of the fish that we see in Adar, the mazal, how it presents itself? It's not just a fish going through the water. It is two fish in opposite directions. And so Haman said, just like the fish swallow each other up, so too I, Haman, am going to swallow up the Jewish people. But it didn't realize that Hashem's in charge. And this month is a month of very good mazal, and there's a fish coming the other way, and that's the way fish work. Fish move forward and swallow up, but then a larger fish comes along and swallows up that fish instead. And so his goal was to go one fish, but our fish came, thank God, to swallow up. Now the word fish has two letters in it. Daled, Gimel. Daled, Gimel, which is 7, right? 4 and 3. Now we know that there's another 7 that's very important, which is Shabbat, which is why the rabbis tell us a person should have dag b'dag. You should have fish, dag, on dag, the 7th day, on Shabbat. And so Shabbat is the other dag. You see, Shabbat is the end of the week, and Adar is the end of the year. Both are a culmination, and just like Shabbat has the greatest ability to rescue us from all of our troubles and all of our sorrows, so too Adar has the potential in it as well. Haman's knowledge of Torah did not go that far. He may have read a couple of books on Torah, heard it second, third, fourth hand. He didn't understand. Just like Shabbat is the salvation, the Yeshua for the Jewish people, so too Adar has the same ability to rescue us when we are in deep and dire circumstances. Let's talk about Haman, because he definitely plays a big role. The Gemara asks, where is Haman in the Torah? Which is an absurd question, because Haman was dead, right? Wasn't alive, rather, when the Torah was written, and he died many, many years later. So where exactly does he appear? But the Gemara even gives an answer and says, I'll tell you where. Haman is found in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden. What's he doing over there? Well, he's the Nachash. Well, he probably got very pally. It means, say the rabbis, that when Adam and Chava were presented with the ability to not eat from the tree that's Adat, Hashem gave them a rhetorical question and said, Hamina etz hazeh, you want to eat from this tree? Hamin is the same letters as Haman, this species of tree. You know, Haman has the same numerical value as Amalek. Okay? I'll take that again. Amalek, apologize, has the same numerical value as Safek, doubt. You see, if this month is all about happiness, we know that happiness comes from resolving a doubt. That's where the real happiness comes. That's what the Gemara says, and the rabbis talk about it. What is the enemy of happiness? Not having clarity. When a person has clarity in life, when you know what you're meant to be doing, if you know the direction you're going, if you know where you are and you're doing the right thing at this time, right now, you know you're meant to be sitting, listening to Rabbi Hadjoff at Safra Synagogue at this time in this place, you should be the happiest person ever. Because you're doing exactly what you're meant to be doing now. When things become uncomfortable, when does unhappiness kick in? When you're not so sure. Am I meant to be here? Am I meant to be there? Am I meant to be doing this job or am I meant to be doing another job? Am I meant to be married to this person or that, dating this person? All these sefekot cause us great trouble. Haman came from this nation, Amalek. Amalek has a numerical value of 240, and that is the same as Safek. So when you undo doubt in your life, you are ridding yourself of the power of Amalek. That's the key to finding happiness. Trying to remove doubt. How to do that is a big question. That's a big, big challenge. How do we remove doubt from our lives? How do we get to a point with, well, first and foremost, we need to build on our emunah. You see, when you have faith in God, You're saying, I don't know what I'm going to be doing myself. I don't know what I'm all about. I don't know if I'm going to be with this. Hashem, answer me and give me clarity. Clarity is the greatest bracha a person can have. Finding clarity. Amalek is the enemy of happiness. They are safek. They bring doubt into your life. You know, when the Jewish people left Egypt, we were on a tremendous high. Nothing could beat us at that moment. We had the Makot, Kriyat Yam Suf, on our way to our Sinai. Everything was amazing. And then came along this nation called Amalek, and they said, we don't care. And the Torah says, they're karcha b'derech. They came and they met us along the way. Karcha is a very unusual word. And the rabbis give two interpretations of the word karcha. One is mikra. Amalek are the nation defined by mikra. What's mikra? Happenstance. Coincidence. It just happened. Why? Happens to be. All these makot happens to be. They just came at the right time, in the right place. There's no God directing the action to this world. Kriyat Yam Suf. Nah, they happened to turn up at the Red Sea just the right moment. There was an easterly wind. The tide came in, came out, they walked right through. You can explain away every single thing in this world. Every miracle, revealed or otherwise, can be explained away if you follow the route of Amalek, because Amalek is Safek. So that's Mikra. They are the Mikra people, and that's why Haman chose a lottery to decide when to kill the Jewish people. That's how we choose the day of Adar. Because what he did is he rolled the dice, place your bet, spin the wheel. Round and round she goes. Where she stops, nobody knows. We make fun of that. We make fun of that. We actually call the holiday Purim. We're like, you think it's all happenstance. You say it's all mikra. I'll show you. I'll call the holiday Purim, lottery, and I'll show you how it all happens for a reason. Inside the vision that you see, Amalek, and by the way, there's a little bit of Amalek in everybody. We all have to deal with that little part of us that's like, it just happened that way. I just happened to meet that person. I happened to be walking on the street and something just happened. You know, I must tell you a quick story. I just discussed this with my sister. I don't know if I told the story before. I don't think I've told it here at Safra Synagogue, but I've told people, especially Lubavitchers. People from Lubavitch, they love the story, as you'll see in a second. So a little gift just for you. My sister, many years ago when I was actually I know exactly how old I was. I was like 13, 14 years old, maybe a little bit older. My sister was dating a guy in London who moved to New York. And she was in her early 20s. And she's a bit older than me, and she wanted to go backwards and forwards to see this guy. And she started to do it, to keep dating him. She was convinced that this was her zivug. And I remember my parents and I arguing, yes, no, like she's a young girl, and back then, flying and all the rest of it, whatever it was. So she ended up being given a voucher to fly on an airline. And she went along to the center of London, and she had to actually present this voucher. There was no online in those days. She had to stand literally on a line to get in, the original online, to get in to take this voucher and to trade it in. And she gave the voucher over, and they said, well, when exactly do you want to fly? And she said, well, you know, I'm having trouble with my boss. I have a little bit of a break around, right, Christmas and New Year's. So is there any way that I can fly just then? So they said, well, we have one flight going to New York, which your voucher qualifies for, December 21st. And the year was 1998. And that was the one day. And so, Kachava, she took this voucher, she told me, and she gave it in. She came home, and she said to my parents, I'm going to see my boyfriend in New York. By the way, the boyfriend now, Baruch Hashem, is married to someone else with kids. But anyway, lovely guy. And she said, I got this ticket. Don't run the end. That's not the end of the story. And I got the ticket, and he booked it. And my parents are like, well, he's going to go. And parents are like, well, we need to ask the rabbi. We had a very special rabbi at that time. He was the Lubavitch rabbi, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha, Rav Mordechai Safran. And this Lubavitch rabbi, my parents were very involved with him. He was a great tzaddik, this man, tremendous tzaddik. And the Lubavitch Rebbe was actually alive at the time. Now, we weren't Lubavitchers, but this was a very, very great, he was a very great man. And this rabbi was a very holy rabbi. And believe me, I was not a rabbi, I was in yeshiva, but I was not on track to be a rabbi. But I heard this story, I was like, I want to ask a rabbi. That itself, by the way, stayed in my head. And so, they went to ask, and they sent off, this is going to date you, a fax, right? Off to this great rabbi, who was still alive. He died in 1994. And they sent off it. And we got a return saying, no, she should not go. It's not for her. Break it off. It's not for her. Break it off, not for her, not for her. Do not fly. And I remember my mother and my sister getting into a big fight. We're talking 2 Sephardi women here. It was loud. You know what I'm talking about? Baruch Hashem, Hashem blessed me with 5 Jewish women in my house, so that doesn't compete to what I'm dealing with. But it was a big fight. I remember hearing this thing like, what is going on? Arguing, I want to go. I was like, no, so why not? Because the Lubavitch Rebbe said we should cancel the flight. And I'm like, a rabbi can tell it, he's a travel agent? What is going on? He said, no, don't take it. So this is the facts this rabbi got back and presented to my family. And my parents won the argument. And she canceled the flight. And I think since it was a voucher, there wasn't anything she could do about it. And she had 2 friends on that flight. And December 21st, 1998, was a Pan Am flight that started in, I believe, Germany, went via London, and then made its way to New York. But on the way, it ended up being blown up over a city called Lockerbie. It's a Pan Am flight, and she was on the manifest. She was on it. She was meant to be there. Who cannot hear such a story, right? And a part of you say, that is unbelievable. By the way, I discussed with my sister right before, I'm not even kidding you, she's like, by the way, I was also meant to be in a bus that crashed and everyone died on it as well. I'm like, 1 story for every shiur. I can't do 2. I got to spread them out. But this one is verifiable. She was there. She had a ticket. And the Rebbe, Zecher Tzaddik Lefrach, was a great tzaddik, said, no. Interestingly, I also remember as an addendum to this, she does not, but I remember this part, right? Because I was freaked out, you know what I'm saying? There's always a bit of a Amalek inside us. A little bit of suffix that's like, it's coincidence. I can also cancel a flight. And flights do go down. But I didn't take it that way, neither did she, not on my family. And it impacted us, right? It had a major impact. Right? My parents really changed. I went to yeshiva, and my siblings didn't. It did have a major impact upon us. I remember checking her mezuzot afterwards. All the mezuzot in the house were kosher, except for hers. She was the only one in the entire bayit that was pasul, and 2 letters, and I remember being shown this as a child, seeing 2 letters in the mezuzah were smudged out, and it was, I remember a yud and a mem yam, right? It's all going to come down. There was some connection over that, I can't remember exactly, but that was for sure, the only mezuzah. We have a choice. We can see these events in our lives, and it could be something big like that. That's pretty epic. But there's small stuff. The right person at the right time. The wrong person at the wrong time. Keep your eyes open. You can be a mikra person. And that's why the word karcha b'derech, Amalek came to attack us on the way from Mitzrayim to our Sinai. The word mikra is the word kar. Kar is cold. And Rashi gives a very famous analogy. He says that you have a bath, and the bath is very, very hot. And the first person goes in gets burnt, and they feel the burn. But now the water is cooled down for everyone else. What Amalek started at that time was anti-Semitism. And we've been with it since to this very day. We're seeing it. I know everyone here and watching online saw that video out of Florida. And my kids saw it. I wanted to protect my daughter. She's like, send it to me, I don't want to see it. I don't want you to see it. And I spoke to my wife and I said, you know what, let them see it. We're in Galut. This is exile. And we get comfortable. And I'm as guilty as all of you. And once in a while Hashem is going to throw in an Amalek and say, don't get too comfortable. You are in Galut. You've got to feel a little bit of pain, the insecurity. It's there. It's there to teach you. It happens. It's going to cool you down. But don't let it. Don't let it cool down. I hear people saying, so I'll just neglect my Judaism. I'll remove myself. I listened to a comedian, a very famous comedian. I like to watch comedy. That's who I am. And I'm watching this comedian, and he's talking about how his father's family survived the Holocaust. Everyone else got wiped out, and they moved to, I think, Cuba. There were many, they called themselves Cubans, right? I think someone from my family too. They went to Cuba, and they ended up assimilating, getting into marrying, and he said, thank God for that, because I'm still alive. Okay, he was telling a joke. He was telling a joke. In other words, thank goodness I'm not Jewish anymore, and that's why I'm still alive, because there's so much anti-Semitism. That was his kind of joke. But you know what? That's his decision, and that's his vision. But really, it's not funny. Really, it's not funny. We can make a decision to remain part of our people. We can say, am I proud to be Jewish? Like Esther and Mordechai in the story you're going to hear a lot about this evening, B'ezrat Hashem, and over the next few days. And that was the miraculous venture. There was Esther and Mordechai in the Megillah. Are we proud? Are we going to take an action? Or are we going to, because Esther, Mordechai told her, could have escaped. She could have survived in the palace, but she felt the discomfort. She didn't have the WhatsApp videos of Nazis in Florida. She didn't have that. She had real life Haman, Amalek in her face. She was dining with him, hanging out with him. And at one point she said, I'm a Jew. And she took that step, and that's why it's Megillat Esther and not Megillat Mordechai. She has a name attached to that book and that story forever. And that is the power that a person has and brings, that's the bracha that we bring upon ourselves when we're able to say, I am still Jewish. Even with this, I'm proud to be Jewish. Not like that comedian, I won't mention his name. Not that comedian is like, oh, thank God I'm not a Jew. I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to deal with. Thank God I'm not a Jew. That's not the way we do things. That's not who we are. And that's not what we want from our lives. And so fish, we'll finish off with this. They're dug and they live below the surface. They're not seen. And so fish are not affected by a lot of things that the world's affected by. Even the flood of Noah, the fish were not involved in that. They were able to escape that because they were below the surface. They were below the surface. And that's a wonderful thing. What does that do to us? What are we meant to say? And the answer is that, we've got to be out there, we've got to be proud Jews, and wear our Magen David, or our Chamsa, or our Tefillin, or our Shabbat candles on our sleeves. But when it comes to showing our success, let's be careful. Not to bring ayin hara, because fish are not affected by ayin hara. They're below the surface. And so although we're out there, and we're on social media, and we're out in the streets, and we want to show, you've got to take a little bit off. You don't want to always put yourself in the face of everyone else and show you can be successful and have a nice house and a nice car, but don't overdo it. There's got to be a little bit of tzniut, and I don't just mean the way we cover ourselves up and the clothing we put on. That's a small part of tzniut, an important part, but that's not it. Tznuah it's a way of living. I don't want to always put my successes onto other people. And so every success and every meal has to be posted on social media? Is this the way we have to be? I'm on social media. I mean, many of you know that. And that's okay. And you want to present things sometimes, and it has to be used as a force for good because, hey, we're stuck with it and we're on it. But not everything has to be thrown on. And not every celebration, every success, and every gift, and every new possession, and every house. Take it easy. Take the edge off. How do we keep brachot in our lives? The brachot that God willing we're going to receive this month, take into the next year, beginning Nisan. And that is, don't show it off. Because not everyone's married, and not everyone's got a nice car, and not everyone's got a nice house, and we don't want to elicit jealousy. We've got to follow the fish principle of going a little bit below the surface. So yes, we have success and we can enjoy it, but a part of us always has to be below the surface. And that, my friends, is the secret of Purim. And through the ability to enjoy the success that we have and sometimes keep them to ourselves and not splash everything for everyone, God will mida keneged mida, give us continued success and allow us to enjoy more in this world. That, my friends, is really the Megillah of Esther, of being megaler, that which is hidden. Megillat Esther, to reveal that which is not seen, and that is godliness in this world. Because that's what we're here to megaler. Not the stuff that we have, but the good actions that we do. I'm wishing you all a wonderful Purim, a Purim of success and blessings. And let's all, God willing, remember to look for those signs and don't push them away like Amalek, to say they're all doubtful, godly actions and events, but see HaKadosh Baruch Hu within every single aspect of our lives. Purim Sameach. Thank you.